I've known some of these folks for many years. I might get a little choked up in introducing a few of them, but I want to get right to it. I actually have a official introduction for Susan, and I might start with it, but you know what? I'm just going to introduce Susan. Can you stand up here with me? Give me some moral courage. Susan, I've known since her son-in-law was alive. Heath Robinson, Sergeant First Class, SFC, Heath Robinson, served this country in Iraq, breathed some of the fumes I did, but it made him incredibly sick. But it's something we as a country asked him to do. It's something our government asked him to do, and he willingly carried that burden in Iraq and brought that sickness home with him. And as a country, we came together and decided, you know what, if we have enough money to send people to war, we ought to have enough money to take care of them when they come home. And so the PACT Act was passed. Not easily. Almost every Republican voted against it. In fact, 2 Republicans fist bumped when they killed the bill the first time. Do you want to say who they were?
Ted Cruz and Steve Daines. Rob Portman was standing there too.
Steve who?
Daines.
Ted Cruz and Steve Daines. But Susan has been at the tip of the spear in driving this legislation forward to take care of not just those who are still left fighting these illnesses, but the families as well. Her daughter, her granddaughter, grandson? Granddaughter. To the point where when the passage of the PACT Act was in doubt and we needed a display of just how intensely we felt about it, how much it mattered. I think you might be in one of these pictures. There was a vigil on the steps of the Capitol.
6 days.
6 days, day and night, sleeping on the steps of the Capitol, making the point that, look, if this doesn't happen, people are going to die. People who would have willingly given their lives for this country are going to be condemned to die because of things that they were asked to do. That bill is named after Susan's son-in-law. It's the Heath Robinson. What's PACT stand for?
Promise to address comprehensive toxins.
It's a promise. It's a promise. I have some bad news for you. In the continuing resolution that was just passed, the $23 billion that was promised to all of those vets who shouldered the burden for us, to their families, to Susan's daughter and granddaughter, that was removed from the continuing resolution. $23 billion. At the same time that the Department of Defense budget was increased. So you tell me where our priorities are. Susan, I've embarrassed you enough that I handed it over to you.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. You're going to have to bear with me. When this passed in 2022, I thought I wasn't going to have to tell this story again. It's very difficult for me. The Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson promised to address Comprehensive Toxins Act of 2022, or PACT Act for short, is a law that expanded VA health care and benefits for veterans exposed to burn pits and other toxic substances. This law helps to provide generations of veterans and their survivors with the care and benefits they've earned and deserve. On February 21st of this year, Senator Blumenthal proposed Senate Amendment 689 to the continuing resolution, which would have ensured full and uninterrupted funding for the Department of Veterans Affairs health care and benefits provided by the PACT Act, preventing any cuts or delays in light of the Trump administration's efforts to shrink the VA. The amendment was tanked by Senate Republicans, and as Ken said, in the continuing resolution, they took $23 billion away from the PACT Act fund. The namesake on this historic legislation, Heath Robinson, an Ohio Army National Guardsman combat medic who deployed to Iraq in 2006, was my son-in-law. I'm going to explain what Senator Moreno's vote meant to us and all veterans suffering from burn pits and other toxic exposures, because Senator Moreno voted no on that Blumenthal's resolution to protect the PACT Act. On March 21st, 2017, I received a highly distressed call from my daughter, Danielle. Heath had just been diagnosed with a rare lung cancer after the oncologist exclaimed, "What the hell have you been exposed to?" My kids were told that Heath had 4 to 6 weeks to live if a treatment couldn't be found to extend his life, because there was no research on how to treat his cancer. Having a 3-year-old daughter, Heath wanted to hurry and create a grand memory for her, so we booked a Disney cruise with the doctor's blessing, even though we were warned Heath could die on that cruise. The National Guard assured us that military personnel in Puerto Rico would come retrieve his body should he die. Fortunately, he survived the cruise, and with a miracle immunotherapy treatment, he fought to live for 3 years. 3 years of pain, suffering, nearly dying, emergency surgeries, many ER trips, being sent from hospital to hospital in Columbus, Ohio, because no one knew what to do with him. Heath's toxic exposures caused not only cancer, but a rare mucous membrane autoimmune disease as well, resulting in chronic gushing nosebleeds and bleeding from his ears. Sometimes these nosebleeds lasted for over an hour, while vomiting too. One morning, my granddaughter found him on the bathroom floor, covered in blood, leaving her traumatized and crying, "Why is this happening to my daddy?" This entire nightmare happened because there was no PACT Act. You see, the PACT Act mandates toxic screenings every 5 years for every service member who ever stepped foot in Iraq or Afghanistan. Had you gotten yours, Ken? Yeah. Okay. Had the PACT Act been in place, Heath would have been screened and his cancer possibly caught at early onset and more treatable. Senator Moreno's vote against protecting the PACT Act endorses the suffering that Heath and my family endured, and will take the VA's motto we gave it back in 2017, back to delay, deny, hope you die. In 2019, Danielle, a physical therapist working full-time, had a young daughter and a terminally ill husband to care for, which became overwhelming. Someone suggested they apply for the VA's comprehensive caregiver benefits, which would pay a stipend so that Danielle could take an unpaid leave of absence from her job and be compensated as a full-time caregiver to her dying husband, a war veteran. They were denied. The VA stated that they knew Danielle was providing a high level of care to her terminally ill husband. However, they did not prove that his lung cancer, although it was 100% service-connected, was not combat-related. Heath had to prove his cancer was combat-related to get these benefits. At that time, the VA stance was, there is currently no scientific evidence connecting burn pits exposure and any serious illnesses. For those of you who aren't aware of what was burned in these 10-acre pits, here's a few things. Wrecked military vehicles and jets, computers, printers, dead animals, chemical weapons, plastic bottles, pesticide containers, mattresses. Human waste included human body parts, explosives, ammunition, medical waste, asbestos, batteries, paint cans, cleaning supplies, expired medications, and with jet fuel as an accelerant. It's no exaggeration to say the U.S. government unleashed chemical weapons attacks on America's soldiers. In late 2019, I moved in with Danielle and Heath to help. There were times when the two of us couldn't keep up with his care. More than once, Danielle collapsed on the floor out of sheer exhaustion from working a full-time job, stress of watching her husband slowly die, and not sleeping for days at a time. I can never rid my mind of the images and sounds of me laying on the floor next to her, trying to comfort her, while my granddaughter is crying, with her daddy in the next room crying and puking with blood gushing from his nose, struggling to breathe because oxygen tubes don't stay in your nose when you have a bloody nose. I had to leave my daughter on the kitchen floor to save Heath from dying by shoving the oxygen tube in his mouth in between episodes of vomiting. Senator Moreno's vote against protecting the PACT Act endorses the suffering my family endured by being denied caregiver benefits. At one point, Heath was in extreme abdominal pain for which doctors were perplexed. These illnesses from toxic exposures aren't typical, and neither are the side effects from the treatments. Eventually, a drug that mitigated Heath's pain was realized, which costed $2,000, so the VA denied it. Heath, being a soldier, had battled hard, but the pain was so unbearable that he begged my daughter and me to overdose him. I doubt Senator Moreno knows how it feels to watch a loved one suffer intense pain, be denied the medication to mitigate it by the government who sent him off to war and poisoned him with illegal burn pits because it cost too much. Senator Moreno's vote against protecting the PACT Act endorses the suffering that Heath and my family endured, so much so Heath begged us to kill him. May 5th, 2020, the VA sent their contracted hospice provider to the home without a hospital bed and other necessary supplies. We learned that the nurse wasn't given enough of the meds that they used to help the patient die peacefully. Because the VA didn't get the supplies Heath needed to help him die, the only place we could get Heath comfortable was on the floor with Danielle under him, holding him in her arms, which she did for 7 hours. Around 4 a.m., someone showed up with a bed, setting it up a couple feet from where Heath was dying on the floor, disturbing him with air compressor noise so loud it could have woke up the entire block. And they brought no sheets. The only twin sheets available were my granddaughter's Little Mermaid sheets. It crushed me to know I was going to watch her daddy die on her Little Mermaid sheets. I get the sheets on the bed when the nurse says, "Well, he's dead weight right now. We can't get him in the bed. He's going to have to die on the floor." Danielle took charge and insisted getting him in the bed. He already was dying with his dignity stripped by the VA, and she wasn't going to allow it anymore and let him die on the floor. Senator Moreno's vote against protecting the PACT Act endorses that suffering that Heath and my family endured. Because the VA claimed more research was needed to prove burn pits caused his cancer, I had arranged with a leading researcher at Vanderbilt University that when Heath died, he would coordinate a lung autopsy. Again, the VA should have been doing this, but they weren't interested in spending the money. My daughter paid $1,800 for this autopsy. The findings were more shocking than we expected. The pathologist said it looked like a bomb went off in his lungs. Aside from huge cancer tumors, Heath had other diseases we weren't aware of: pulmonary fibrosis and interstitial lung disease, which was possibly the rare constrictive bronchiolitis that many soldiers have been diagnosed with. He had deformed blood vessels in his lungs and unidentifiable cells that we later learned were titanium. Several days after Heath's death on May 6, 2020, my daughter received a letter from the VA stating that on May 6th, the board convened to reconsider Heath's appeal on the caregiver benefits denial, when they received word that the soldier had passed away. Therefore, they closed the case. They extended condolences to her for the loss of her husband and thanked her for taking care of their soldier. They denied the caregiver benefits, but thanked her for taking care of her soldier, her husband. Senator Moreno's vote against protecting the PACT Act endorses the suffering that Heath and my family endured. Had the PACT Act been in place, most of the nightmare I just explained, and I didn't tell you everything, wouldn't have happened. Yes, Heath would have gotten cancer most likely, but like I said, the screenings mandated now might have saved his life, or at least extended his life. They would have received the caregiver benefits, which would have helped relieve a lot of the stress. he would have gotten that $2,000 drug. We believe the hospice care would have been better had the PACT Act been in place, because we feel we got the cheaper deal because Heath's cancer wasn't considered combat related. That's why we fought so hard for the PACT Act, so that other families wouldn't have to suffer like we did. The proposed cuts to the VA and the $23 billion cut from the PACT Act's Toxic Exposure Fund is going to hurt veterans, whether they are PACT Act covered or not. As of February of 2025, 1,533,309 PACT Act claims have been approved, with an approval rate of over 74%. 31,000 of these are Ohio veterans. Before the PACT Act, 78% of burn pit claims were denied by the VA. These VA cuts are a direct threat to veterans, their families, and continuing the implementation of the PACT Act. The proposed cuts are not just numbers on a budget sheet. They are a direct assault on the lives of our nation's warfighters, their families, and the hard-fought progress made with the PACT Act. Slashing 80,000 jobs and cutting funding will cripple the VA's ability to properly implement the PACT Act, as well as cripple providing health care and benefits to all veterans in the VA healthcare system. Longer backlogs will be created, delaying medical care, increase veteran suicides, and increase suffering for the veterans already facing severe health conditions. Senator Moreno voted to approve these cuts, and I would like to ask him why. Why would you not protect sick and dying war heroes and families like mine from needless suffering? Why are you opposed to caring for the men and women who willingly went off to war and fought for all of you and all of us? Why? Thank you.